First of all, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the state of casual and hyper-casual gaming in India. We're going to be discussing opportunities and challenges in the space with a couple of experts that have joined on today's panel. My name is Nishant. I'm thrilled to be your host for this evening. Just some housekeeping notes. Remember, this is not going to be a super formal conversation. Nothing in the gaming industry ever is. Hopefully, we'll have some freewheeling chats here with Anurag and Surojit, and we will have some good insights coming out of the course of the next 30 to 60 minutes as well. The purpose of today's webinar is to explore the rapidly growing casual and hyper-casual gaming sectors in India. We want to examine the unique opportunities and challenges faced by developers, investors, publishers, and any kind of other industry stakeholders. There's always been this narrative of building from India for the global audience. What I really wanted to explore over the course of today's conversation is, does that narrative still stand? Or are we also seeing a shift towards Indian developers and publishers now thinking of the Indian gaming audience first? And why or why not that is, a reality that may or may not take place in the next few years. The goal, as always, is to provide whoever's listening with valuable insights that can help shape strategies in this industry. So whether you're a student looking to get into the space, whether you're a business leader that's trying to, find your next big opportunity, or even an investor just looking to get a lay of the land, we hope that this podcast and the pieces of content that come out of it will provide some value for you. Let me start with a quick introduction of our guests. I'm joined today by two folks who I personally believe are trailblazers in the Indian gaming industry. First, we have Anurag. He's the founder of a startup called Panelists Games that publishes casual games made in India, targeted globally. Anurag has recently been in the news for having raised funding from some of India's most prominent angel investors, including Kunal Shah of Cred and Sameer Pittalwala of Google. Next, we have Surojit, someone that I have known as Babo for the longest time of my life. He is a former co-founder of a hyper-casual game development company, and a lesser-known fact is he's also one of the co-founders of AFK Gaming. We started this up, in 2012-ish when we didn't have a clue about what we were doing. His hyper-casual game development company was then acquired by Crazy Labs, and his company has created some of the most viral ASMR games. You've probably heard of them: soap cutting and acrylic nails. Sorry. We are honored to have you both today on the podcast. Let's get into it. I'd like to start by discussing the current landscape of casual and hyper-casual gaming in India. Now, over the past few years, we've seen tremendous growth in the space, with Indian developers making their mark on the global stage. What does this mean for the future, and how can industry stakeholders capitalize on these opportunities? Anurag, I'd like to open with you, and maybe you could do a better job of introducing yourself than I did.
Sure. Actually, thanks for the introduction, Nishant, and, glad to be here. I have been in the gaming space for only a year and a half. Rather, I've been in the Indian startup ecosystem for almost a decade. So I've worked 7 years between Snapdeal and Swiggy. So I'm someone who's kind of jumped from e-commerce to food delivery to short form video, which was my previous startup, and now gaming. But it's been an interesting journey wherein I believe that one great thing about gaming as a space is that you don't live or die by the only game that you make. And that perhaps is a norm in the gaming industry, and it's an accepted norm. But at least from where I'd worked earlier, either Snapdeal works or it doesn't. Either Swiggy works or it doesn't. My previous app, which I was building, Wakao, it wasn't working. So we had to shut shop and actually return capital back to our investors. So what I like about gaming at large as a space is that, you can keep taking multiple shots at the pot until and unless you find something that scales non-linearly. Some of you may be, aware of the lore from, how Angry Birds was like Rovio's 50-second game. But those principles and tenets still hold true, right? And I feel for an industry where you have to take multiple shots at the goal to orchestrate success, there is no better place than India to do this, right? Given the inherent cost structures that we have and the talented pool of game developers, it just sets us up for taking very, very high quality shots. And I was just speaking to Macha from IGDC, and he was telling me that the number of game developers in India have doubled from 21 So while the casual game market has gone through a bit of its own unique challenges in terms of user acquisition, etc., it's getting even more and more complicated. But there are 400 plus studios now in India. There are 30,000 game developers. So there's a thriving pool of creators who are building games, and it's getting. At a meta level, it's getting even easier to build games thanks to game engines like Unity. The barrier to entry to become a game developer is extremely low. So when there's more content, there will be more shots at the pot, and that just increases the chances of success across, right? Whether it's at a global stage or whether it's a game that's built in India. I think what we should cover through the course of this conversation is also what does it take to orchestrate that success, because that path to success from when you build your game is actually very, very convoluted and very complicated. Actually, it's just gotten a lot more complicated than how it used to be back in the days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the complexity of how to become a successful game developer in India is something we will touch upon. Surojit, okay, for everyone that's just tuning in, I'm going to call him Babu because Surojit is something I'm not comfortable saying, when I've seen his face for 10 long years now. Babu, please tell me what your experience has been like, and what is your view on the state of casual and hyper casual gaming, and how is it different from when you started versus now?
So firstly, I think it's been more than 20 years and not just 10. So you're one of the few people that knows me by my nickname in the industry more than my real name. But it's nice to be interviewed by somebody or webinared by somebody who has known the journey for so many years. Now, Nishad, I think you would know when I was starting up in game development and we used to chat a bit at that time, things were definitely quite different. There was a completely different approach to how you build and go to market. In today's market, we talk a lot about user acquisition, marketing your games, running ad campaigns, acquiring users and things like that, and then be profitable on that expense that you make. But back in the day, things were not, strategy for independent or small developers at least was not, it wasn't this. My co-founder at Firestore, Karan, used to run a company called All in a Day's Play, where they were doing primarily App Store optimization and organic growth, and managed to reach over 20 million installs. And this was like 6-7 years ago. And at that time, that was kind of the model or the strategy in terms of how you grow. And for a small studio, user acquisition, obviously you don't have funds for it. So we were heavily reliant at that time on being featured by Google Play and Apple, so that we could get our initial 100,000 user, install base, test on that, and then see if we could build a successful game from there. And most of the times for an independent studio, those 100,000 users or a couple 100,000 users would be more than enough to generate enough revenue for you to run your studio. During that time, when the market was in this state, I was running a studio called Bioff Studios, and we were doing and testing casual games with the freemium model in mind. And at the time, we were testing for retention, meaning trying to basically make sure that the users that come into the game actually stay there. And until we, cracked some basic retention metrics, we wouldn't move forward with actually producing the rest of the game at the time. And that was kind of how the freemium model had built itself with games like Candy Crush. And even mid-core games like Clash of Clans and Supercell were adopting this kind of model. So it was a slight evolution. Again, at that time, we were moving more towards a data-oriented approach. As we were brought into the space, the extreme version that data-oriented or to build out the.
I think you're having a bit of a network issue there, Babu. Let me just pause there for a second.
Yes. Can you hear me now a bit better?
It's better now, yes.
Yeah. So back then, the freemium model was all about testing your retention and getting to market by tracking certain metrics. And only if you track those metrics in retention would you then go out and build, the entire game and your marketing strategy and all of that. And that's kind of how games like Candy Crush and Clash of Clans actually came to market around a decade ago. And what hypercasual did is that it basically put this model or that data-oriented approach on steroids. It brought in customer acquisition costs and user acquisition into play, and allowed a lot of small studios to build out their models and their strategies in a very systematic and data-oriented way. And I think that is the biggest difference between how the market was back in the day and how the market is today. And with most of the smaller studios that have gone into hyper-casual as well and had some success, you'll notice that, everyone is a little bit more educated about customer acquisition costs, about retention, about LTVs, and about generating revenue and things like that from a very early stage compared to what it was like before. So I think that would be the key change and the differences I've seen, at least in my journey in the industry.
Interesting. Anurag, I know we had a very brief discussion about this offline, right? And I think it's very much in your wheelhouse. You mentioned that you've kind of taken this approach, this data-driven approach that Surojit is talking about, turned it into a process and are now applying it to multiple games within your umbrella of titles, right? Talk to me a little more about this. How does that process work from identifying a game that has potential, testing it to validate that potential, and then scaling it up?
Sure. So, I actually, jumped into gaming when, what Surojit was mentioning was pretty much the reality, right? I haven't actually seen that era, though I've heard about it a lot from studios when you build a great game and it had, it had good metrics, Google and Apple itself would give it that organic reach that, you can run your studio sustainably. When I walked into gaming, actually, I had just acquired these skills around user acquisition and product-led growth. That was pretty much what I was doing at my previous startup, Vakao. And user acquisition, I realized, is not just about running campaigns, it's about building an engine of creatives, because in today's day and age, there is very little that's left in the hands of human beings in terms of targeting users and figuring out personas. It's a spray market wherein you're just hoping, you're trying to increase the surface area of your luck. And I will use that as a tenet for everything that we do across the board, right? So let's talk about genre identification. So one thing that I've noticed is that the time spent by a chart-topping game, a game which was, let's say, in top 10, top 20, that time spent is actually decreasing year on year, right? Because there are newer and newer game mechanics which are coming through. So this year, earlier this year, there was a mechanic called wood nut puzzle, right? Unscrewing wood nuts, right? So, it was a rage. Bunch of, game developers and publishers made to the tune of $500,000 per day at their peak, right? But it faded away and it's not there in top 10 anymore. So the time spent by games in top 10, top 20, that's decreasing. And usually what happens is that game developers start building the game when they see something in the top 10. And you know what? Hey, I can build this. I can build a better version of this. But what we don't realize is possibly it's too late, because games today are like trend lines. How one scrolls reels and, there is a song in vogue and then it moves out and, the next one comes through. There is some, it's not to say that those games don't continue to make money. They will. Just that peak performance or that, U-curve bend happens at a point when there is a very high receptibility of that game mechanic from users, and that nobody can predict, right? So, first thing that we imbibe is let's have a forward-looking mindset to identifying game genres rather than look at what's already large. By the way, two of the games that are scaling for us, we had picked them by looking at the markets only back in the days. We picked them up last year in August, right? But now whatever we are prototyping, it's not there in top 10, top 50, top 100. Someone somewhere has conviction on it and we are borrowing it that, perhaps this is a bet taken best right now, because with a rising tide, it will lift all boats, right? So if this game mechanic is in vogue, perhaps we'll have a chance at it. So that's one. We identify genres in a forward-looking manner, not by looking at, what's already working. Second, thanks to this large developer pool, and by the way, I started off Felicity bootstrapped. You talked about the fundraise, but that happened almost 6 months later. So I also, because this was the second time I was doing this and I failed at my first startup, I wanted to first taste some revenue, see whether or not I'll spend like the next 8 to 10 years building out in space. So initially when I got the games built, I got them built by indie game developers whom I've like got hold of through IGDC or like, by just cold LinkedIn connects. So what I realized is there's this large pool of developers who are extremely talented, and Unity has made it really, really easy to prototype games, and polish is something that these guys understand. So when we identify a genre, now we have a more extended network. We prototype these games with this network, right? Third, so we don't build anything in-house. Third thing that we do is we integrate our SDK, which basically breaks down the very, very early journey of the users in the game. Because what at least we have observed is that if that's not coming together well, then there's no point expanding the scope of the game. So our users even playing your first level, are even users even completing your onboarding, and you'll be surprised by the kind of drop-offs that happen in these points. That 100 users will launch your game, but only 70 people will play your first level. So where did the 30 people disappear? And those are like microchasms where we go hunting and like optimizing. So in this way, what we do is we almost partner with the game developer on improving their game, rather than coming from the point of view, this game was good or bad? Yes, no. So most of the publishers take a very tenderish approach, wherein, hey, this was good. Sure. I mean, here's our feedback. Work on this for 6 months and come back to us with your next test. Or it's a cold no without any reasons. Here we actually work with the game developer that we also want to set this up for success. Let's keep making some changes while we are testing the game to give it a fair enough shot at, really, really breaking out. And then if that starts happening in terms of metrics, we, start working on the monetization, where should be the ad placements, what kind of pricing should there be for, products inside. And we try to see whether we are able to get to at least 60 to 70% recovery of the acquisition cost of the user. I don't know of a world where organic exists. So for me, I have to make money on paid user. If I'm not making money on paid user, then I'm building my business on hope. And that's something that I don't understand. I have not seen that world, so I don't even know what that looks like, right? So essentially on the paid user, if I'm paying $1 to acquire the user, if we are able to recover 60 to 70% back, that's when we know that we've reached a point wherein perhaps the ends can be made to meet by expanding the scope of the game, by working better on UA. And post that is when our team then dedicatedly works with the game developer to kind of, figure out what are the changes that have to be made. Today we work on a retainer model, straight out, because, we are also early and we don't know what kind of revenue the games will scale up to. But in the long run, we'll move to a rev share or a profit share model, so that there is non-linearity for the developers who are working with us as well, right? So in the last 1 year, we would have tested 10 games, failed miserably at 8. And 2 games, basically, we make more money than what we spend. One of them is a hidden objects game it's a hybrid casual hidden objects game called Seek and Find. And the second one is Nova Solitaire. We are scaling them in US and a few other Western markets. But yeah, that's a journey, because with every successive install, your customer acquisition cost increases. So you need to then work on adding more depth to the game. So it's someone the other day told me you are basically a product and analytics company, more than a gaming company. But I think, sure, I mean, we over-index on that, but we also do succumb to the fact that the game has to be fun to play, right? And there's no surrogate for just the appeal of it. If that's not there, then, none of this will really work out. So, but that's pretty much what our model is. Yeah, let's stop there.
Sure. No, I think that's super insightful. One of the key takeaways I'm getting from there is that, the era of build it and they were come never existed. It was either, you put in a lot of manual effort and time into app store optimization and other levers that would allow you to move organic user acquisition, or in today's day and age when competition is aplenty, it is paid user acquisition and the efficiency of your spend, right?
Just to interject this, it does exist in pockets. For example, I mean, there are certain niches, and I continue to meet people who are still breaking out organically. Not to say that, but I have not met someone who has broken out organically in the US or Western markets. Mostly, it's still happening in India. I feel whenever there's an organic breakout, I take that as a surrogate for a market being underserved. Right. So, for example, Fun Stop Games, they launched like a Ram Mandir game, or they launched a Vande Bharat game. Or I met the other day someone who was made a truck simulator. You can drive around in Indian trucks. There is a need for this. Nobody's making these. And perhaps that's the reason why they're organically breaking out. But yes, to a large extent, for any other game mechanic, which, I mean, you and I would have played, organics are dead, right? But I just want to put it out there for people who are listening that, you can also go around finding those niches, just that, they will also get crowded very soon because, the world of gaming is in that sense very, very naked. Everyone knows what everybody else is doing through tools and stuff.
Right. I want to explore two topics here with you, Surojit. First is, did you have a similar experience when it came to finding that breakout in the ASMR games category with soap cutting? That's I want to dive into that first. And then I also want to understand if what Anurag said, right, about having games that are featured on Google or iOS eventually leading to that big organic boost. Are Google and iOS still really the kingmakers when it comes to organic traffic, or is there another way here as well? Over to you.
So let me start with your question about the process we went through to come up with soap cutting. So by the time we were doing soap cutting and we were, in that process with Firespoke, I think both of us, Karan and I, as co-founders, we were a lot more mature in terms of, what we knew about the market and how we were going to approach it and stuff like that. We also had the support of a publisher at the time. And that obviously was invaluable to us, the funding, the guidance and all of that stuff. But at the same time, we were at the studio is the one that eventually had to come up with the concept, do the R&D to figure out what will work, what won't work, and then eventually do the execution of everything from the creatives on the ad campaigns to the eventual game itself. Now, the process we went through was very systematic and data-driven and very research-oriented before we even decided that we would target the ASMR category. ASMR was obviously super popular. It was something that we were seeing was extremely trendy and stuff. But nobody had really gamified it, not in the way that we were imagining at least. There were a couple of games here and there, but they weren't really hyper-casualized. They weren't built for the mass markets, both in their mechanics and in their monetization strategy and in their go-to-markets. So that was something that we realized. And eventually, after testing a number of different ASMR ideas and satisfying game concepts, we landed on soap cutting as the one that we wanted to test. Before soap cutting, we actually tested a power washing game as well. But in the process of testing the power washing game, somebody else came and launched a power washing game like a week before we were ready to go into testing. This kind of told us that, whatever we do next, we need to be much faster about it. This market is fast moving, whether it's games or just hyper-casual games, both are fast moving, but hyper-casual is even faster moving than the traditional games market. So we took that very seriously, and when we were doing soap cutting, obviously, we pumped the accelerator and pedal to the metal, working like all night, trying to get the game into testing as soon as possible. And of course, the rest is history. We ended up being successful. But again, the process was very systematic. Having come from a background in the past of having an idea and wanting to execute it, from 10 years ago or 7-8 years ago, to then completely changing mindset and realizing that, hey, the market needs to exist for you to actually even begin to target something. That was a learning that we had acquired by the time that we were doing soap cutting. and I think we employed it in our workflow, and eventually it led to the success of the game. Sorry, Nishad, you had a second part to that question as well, which I
Yeah. So my second part was, when you try and take a game out organically, we've heard that getting featured on Play Store or getting featured on the App Store is what makes or breaks your game, right? At least on the organic side of things. How true is that in today's market? And if it's true, how does one even get to that position where you get noticed by Google and Apple?
So I think something that Anurag mentioned, strikes a chord with me is I think more or less hope is like the enemy of business. And in today's world, organic growth is more a hopeful endeavor, more a hopeful endeavor than say doing user acquisition and stuff. But again, like Anurag mentioned, it isn't impossible. There are segments in the market. There are markets in the world where you could potentially get organic growth, and there are games in the US as well, that have to some degree grown organically before then started to pump in marketing dollars. But obviously today the primary way to grow your user base is to do user acquisition, is to acquire customers and to do ad campaigns. As you grow your scale of the number of users that you're buying, you will, of course, your customer acquisition cost and the amount you're spending to acquire each user on these ad campaigns will eventually start going up. But at the same time, what happens is that the organic footprint of your game also starts increasing because you're ranking better on the stores. People know about your game. They're talking to each other about it. However, having said that, when you are doing user acquisition campaigns at scale and bringing in, millions of users a month, the percentage of users that you get from organics is very small. And usually that ends up being a pretty negligible number when it comes to hyper casual games, at least. The reason being that you're monetizing most of your users through ads. So that disproportionate earning that you get from spending, say, $1 to acquire a user and then being able to make $5 on that user, that does not exist in a primarily ad-based model because you're only making a certain amount of dollars from the user, so you can't grow exponentially. So in hyper-casual, that's always been kind of an issue. But obviously in casual games and more mid-core games and hardcore games, the value of an organic user is significantly higher. And then obviously you calculate your lifetime value of that user and all differently. But at least in the world that we were in hyper-casual, organic didn't contribute too much to our bottom line and or to our top line. And it didn't contribute too much to even our overall downloads as we were scaling. So you can imagine hyper-casual games are literally getting 100 million users over 6 months, but the organic users are barely contributing to any of the revenue pie that you see in a hyper-casual game. And in terms of Google and Apple supporting, it was always a case that with Google and Apple support, you could only get a certain amount of users, say 100,000 or 200,000, 300,000, something like that. But that is only going to generate a certain amount of revenue for you, which is not enough usually to run your studio or to continue running the game or operating the game. So, relying on that as a strategy, again, hope is the enemy of business, and expecting or hoping for those features and things like that. Today's market, obviously, that it just doesn't work anymore.
Super, very insightful. If I were to oversimplify everything that I've just heard, right, it takes money to make money. To actually go out there and get that first check means running on the funding treadmill. You both have run that race on multiple occasions. Anurag, I believe this is your first rodeo running it in the gaming sector, but you've done it prior in your prior startups as well. What does it take for a small developer to go out there and get their first check, right? Because from what I'm hearing, without having some level of marketing money to at least test your concept, you're not going to get any organic traction. And to get that first check means you have to show some level of organic traction. How do you solve this problem?
Firstly, I think it's important to read what even within gaming, I've understood different investors have different thesis, and I mean, we see every investor will invest on the thesis. They will not invest because you want to raise money. They truly believe that something here will shape out a certain way, and that's the reason why because your idea mirrors what they think is why they're going ahead and making that investment. So firstly, it's very important to understand what kind of bets are they willing to take. Are they someone who want to invest in ideas. So when I say ideas, as in like, do they want to invest in an IP? You're making one game, right? And perhaps you are a maestro at making that game, right? Like, let's say you have had prior experience building this one game very, very deep. You scaled it to, let's say, $30-40 million in revenue. You are an expert, you're a master, right? And you want to build another game. There are investors who want to back an idea, right? Like that's one kind of, and of course, I'm not saying that someone who hasn't scaled a game will not be able to raise money, but what I've noticed is that those kind of investors are different from, let's say, investors who are looking to back a business, right? So some people want to basically invest in an IP, and they are thinking that what can this IP perhaps become? How will this IP become a business? So they are taking an IP first segue into building their business. Some people are like, okay, sure. I mean, we don't care about what game you build as long as, there is a math that can work out in terms of like a certain top line, bottom line, and scale, right? So it's very, and just to give you a classic example, like Krafton, for example, in India, everyone knows about them. They're someone who go after IPs, right? They themselves are publishers. So they are actually investing from their balance sheet into IPs that they want to perhaps potentially own or further via their own publishing muscle, right? So it's very important to firstly figure out and even like when you want to raise, don't just go and raise. In fact, first just speak to people and understand where is their head at. Because I have noticed that even within angels, people look at the world very differently. Some are very, very business driven and some are very, very ideas driven. So if you're a game developer who has 1 or 2 game ideas, I would say find those first, right? Second thing to do, of course, is to just validate that idea from the people who believe in ideas as well, right? Like, for example, let's say I'm planning to build a word game, right? And you have certain, why could this work and why could this not work? Obviously, you will know when it lands. There's no other way. Nobody can tell you whether this will work. But like, why will it not work? Like, just like go and speak to people. What I've seen is you often end up raising money, at least in pre-seed and seed, when you're seeking advice rather than when you're seeking money. Right? Like a lot of the people whom I spoke to, and all these gaming angels, by the way, I have never ever interacted with them before, right? They were not a part of my supposed network. Like they were not Snapdeal, Swiggy or whatever. I have gone and spoken to them in my peak vulnerability. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I think that it's very difficult to make a game and make money out of this. Why are people not testing more games? Like, I've just met them in peak vulnerability, right? That what should I do? How do you think I should look at? And it's been like 1, 2, 3 conversations over which they have also seen some progress in my thinking. They left me with some thought, then I came back. So I'd say speak to more people. Don't be in a rush to raise, right? Like, show, like, if you are taking feedback, identify the right sort of people to speak to, ideas of business. Second, like, try to take feedback and act on it, show progress, and the checks will come. If that's happening, it will come. Otherwise, it's very difficult for anybody to just like put a punt on. Otherwise, then very network led, right? And there's a network exhaustion that happens for everyone. Like, even I'm sure Jeff Bezos also has a network exhaustion somewhere, right? He also doesn't know everyone in the world. So that's what I'll say for fundraising broadly.
Quite a comprehensive answer. I think what I want to touch upon with you, Surojit, is about the monetization angle of it, right? So you've seen a game go from 0 to hundreds of millions of plays, right? At what point do you start thinking, hey, my game is reaching the end of its life cycle, I should start putting it into end of life mode and making as much as I can out of this before it's gone? And how does that decision play out in terms of in-app purchases versus ad revenue in the casual and hyper-casual gaming segment?
Okay, so to answer your first question, we were fortunate enough to not have any of our games reach the end of their cycle by the time we were acquired. Post acquisition as well, the games seem to do well. However, what happened was that, of course, at a point, revenue stops growing and it starts plateauing. When that happens, obviously you need to act and react, and things like improving your creatives to lower your marketing costs, or adding new design elements into the game, or adding new features that users can play over the long haul, and then therefore increasing your revenue, is something that you constantly do through the process of scaling the game. But at the same time, when you notice plateaus and you notice drops and valleys in your revenue chart, then obviously you need to react faster, do more, and try and maintain that growth that was happening. But obviously, the market saturates after a point. You can't always control for that. So as much as you can, especially in hyper casual, because it's trend based. The game itself is based on trends, and so are the marketing strategies. You then tend to look at what trends are working within the category that I'm doing. So in ASMR, in soap cutting, in slicing, and things like that, or what are the videos that are working right now? What are the things people are engaging in? What are they posting on social media? And then how do we bring an element of that into the game to eventually lower our customer acquisition cost, or to give the users something that they are actually looking for within the game experience that will make them stay longer and play more and eventually pay more or monetize better.
Got it. And what kind of, in casual and hyper casual gaming, how much of that revenue comes from ads versus actually paying customers?
So in the hyper casual, at least, the revenue from ads was like close to 99 or 99, even like close to 100% for a lot of games. Primarily because these were small snackable experiences. The entire model of hyper casual, the business of hyper casual, is built around ad monetization, meaning that we acquired users for a very low cost, and therefore we did not expect them to stay in the game for too long and monetize. So even the games were not designed to keep users in the game for, say, months on end, but more or less for like 3 to 7 days at most. Sometimes obviously there are games that had 14, 20 days of content, but more or less most of the games in hyper casual that you saw had a very short amount of content, primarily because it was very cheap to acquire these customers, and it didn't take long to be profitable on them. That means if a user played even up to 3 to 5 days, you could make up the cost that you were spending on marketing and eventually be profitable. And because you're spending such a low amount to acquire each customer, you're also able to acquire hundreds of millions of customers, for a single game. And that was the arbitrage.
Can you add some context around this in terms of numbers, right? How much would it cost you to acquire a customer in this segment? And, how much would you make off of them in that 3 to 5 day lifespan that they're playing their game?
So in hyper casual, in 2021, when it was really coming up, the benchmark that most of the publishers had set for customer acquisition cost was 30 cents per user. Meaning that if you get a customer acquisition cost better than 30 cents per user, it means your game is marketable. Now
this is a US audience, correct?
This is a US audience. Yes, this testing was done in the US, primarily only for the US audience, and customer acquisition cost in different countries obviously would be different. So when hyper casual was starting off, 30 cents was kind of the benchmark, and actually it was even lower than 30 cents. Back in the day, it was 18 cents and lower. And if you had like a 10, 12 cent game, then you were like really good, ready to scale. You make a game in 2 weeks based on the ad that you generated, and you could probably have a very successful and profitable game. Over time it grew, and by the time I think 22, 23 came around, we were at 30 cents to 40 cents. And then obviously publishers started going more towards hybrid monetization and started looking at higher customer acquisition costs. So you could even have a less marketable game and be profitable on it. But I think 30 cents was more or less the average for the longest period of time in hyper casual. And publishers would look to operate on anything from a 10 to 20% margin on top of that 30 cents. So you would expect 35, 40 cent would be like a decently profitable game. Over 100 million installs, that amounts to a lot of money. And, in that margin of 5, 10, 20 cents, that was profit. The publisher and the developer, the development studio, would split that profit in whatever proportion that the deal suggested. So if you sign a deal for a 50-50 rev share, then obviously you get 50% of the profits. And, so on and so forth for different splits. But that's kind of how the model worked. It was based on low margin, high volume, arbitrage on basically showing the user ads. And that was hyper casual. And hybrid casual, and these words, hyper casual, hybrid casual, casual, mid-core, these ultimately, you can define them in many ways, but the way I look at it, at least, or the way a lot of us look at it in development, is that it is the definition of the split between how you're monetizing. So in hyper casual, it's a 99% ad monetization approach. In hybrid casual, you usually see like 60% ads and then 40% IAPs or something close to that. In casual, you're seeing more like 90% in-app purchases and 10% ads. In mid-core, you're seeing more 95, 99% in-app purchases and then 1-2% ads. And then, in hardcore, you're seeing like pretty much zero ads. So that's kind of in terms of we define the genres. It was primarily an ad.
Lost you again, Surojit.
Sorry. So hypercasual was primarily at the ad-based model out of all of these.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, no, that adds a lot of clarity to this, and thank you for putting numbers around it as well, right? Anurag, do you think you've seen something similar in terms of, the monetization versus acquisition costs in the games that you publish?
No, I mean, we haven't experienced 30 cents ever because, we first published our first game in 2023. So already too late to the party. I think the 30-cent benchmark today is 80 cents from what I understand, which means that, game developers have to develop a game with that depth, right? That they at least make $1.50 on the user. In fact, from what I know, hybrid casual publishers today are very comfortable spending up to $1.50 on CPI as well. But then they expect that kind of depth. And previously, as Surojit was mentioning, that you could make back your money within 5 to 6 days. So it's called return on ad spend. So a 7-day 100% break even was also very, very common back in the days. Today, if you are making 30% of your money back as well in 7 days, that's good. But you need a long-term retentive game. If you're breaking even 30 days, that's very, very good. At scale, at least what I am noticing and seeing around me, that hybrid casual publishers are okay with even anywhere between 30 to 45, and casual publishers are looking at breaking even in 180 days, right? At scale, like millions of dollars. They're looking at 180 to 180 days, like 6 months. So retention and that's why the one more thing that has changed is you need to keep running your game like a live service now. Previously, you could make a game fairly small and modest in scope. You knew that the user will not play it anyway beyond a certain point of time because you spam them with ads. But that's not the case anymore. You need to kind of have a longish life, which needs that there's fresh content. You need to be keep in mind the seasonality of the country in which they are playing. For example, if it's Halloween in the US, then your game better have some content around Halloween. So that's the other new thing that's kind of now very, very important for the game. It's to kind of run it like a live service and keep chugging new content to keep your users engaged for longer, so that you can have a longer LTV or payback window.
Excellent. Okay, we are almost at the end of it. We've got about 10 more minutes left, right? So I'm going to take a moment here, put on my salesman hat, like I promised you I would at the start of this conversation. And for anyone that's watching live or on a pre-recorded version, my colleague Udbhav is dropping a link in chats and in descriptions where you can click, get a special discount on our annual plan, and for less than a slice of a pizza per month, you will get access to insights about gaming, esports, and youth culture industries that you will not regret. So do consider subscribing. Back to the conversation. Surojit and Anurag, right? You guys have talked about a lot from the side of a business that's been through it, seen it all, and have come out, kind of with battle scars at the end of it, I would say, but largely successful. Tell me about the new entrant into the market, right? What does the aspiring student / game developer in a college somewhere in Pune take as his first step towards breaking into this industry as an entrepreneur / game developer? Should they be focusing on, some initial questions that come to mind? Should they be focusing on building the game and then banking on a publisher to sort of do the optimization, the performance marketing side of it? Should they be building some of that skill set in-house? How should they be thinking about this?
So, I mean, I'll go first. I think if you are someone who loves to build a game and, you're supremely passionate about building a game, uh, uh, like, obviously self-publishing is the way everyone would want to go, but there is absolutely no harm in working with a publisher, because the cost of the learnings that a publisher has comes with a lot of capital deployment and inefficient spends, right? Like they would have made several mistakes to learn, and that can't be expected from, let's say, an 18 or a 19-year-old, right? However, uh, 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 on the game development side, they can pick up a lot of things. Like I would say that at that age, two things which are in your control, right? And what's in your control? Uh, Creating a great game which has like widespread appeal and something which people love playing, coming back to, that's in your control. As you keep working with a publisher, you will kind of start learning the tricks of the trade. What are the metrics that they are looking at? Because they also speak to you in a certain language, right? That this is how you optimize the game, and as you keep like making progress and you find those things interesting enough, and or you feel that these are skills that I can pick up myself, because if you're in this bit of a publisher, there is some bottom line money that's coming to you now, right? Like I'm guessing you have some part of the profit share now coming to you. You can start plowing them into your own experiments, because this is an industry where you can't, like, nobody can really tell what will work, including the publishers, right? So everyone's basically just experimenting. Just the appetite of experimentation depends on the availability of capital and resources. So for someone who's starting out, I would recommend like play to your strengths, and if you love making games, do that, and don't worry too much about like your first game being published by a publisher. Eventually you'll figure it out.
I would like to add, I think Anurag put it really well. There's not too much to add there, but just to reiterate the things he said, the younger you are, I think the more important it is to exercise your creative muscles. Obviously, if you have an idea for a game, build it. There's enough tools for you to learn it yourself, to learn Unity, to learn C#, to learn JavaScript, or whatever it needs to actually make and publish a very simple game. So just do it. Publish it, put it out, see what happens. At the end of the day, the worst that will happen is that you'll learn something. From every failure, you will learn something. But even just getting a game out into the market, whether it makes money or not, if that's your first step into the market, I think that's a big success. And then eventually from there, obviously, there are lots of resources. There are webinars like, what Nishant is hosting with the FK, the information that he's putting out. You can always subscribe or read any of the content that's out there. And understand monetization upfront. Understand that a game is a business at the end of the day. It does have to make money. The sooner those learnings come in, the sooner you'll be on track to actually build a successful games business and not just a game. So I think absolutely agree with everything that Anurag said. And I think exercise those creative muscles, build something if you're interested in the market, put it out there, learn the process of getting it on the Google Play Store, the App Store. And then, of course, eventually, if you do want to stay in the industry and build a career out of it, you need to figure out how to, whether it's building a business or actually getting a job, you need to figure out how you're going to go about that. So that would be the next step then.
One line that I would want to just add to this is have very low expectations from your first game in terms of business metrics, right? This is a hits-driven business that we are in, with less than a single-digit percentage success rate on the number of games that actually like really make it. So don't be too hard on yourself. The giants of the industries who like rake in millions, billions, fail almost every quarter, right? Like in India, for instance, in the last 5 years, not a single self-publishing studio has been able to create a large game, right? So don't be too tough on yourself. It's like, just like maximize for the number of attempts, increase the surface area of your luck.
I love that. I love that line, by the way, increasing the surface area of your luck. I think it's very apt for the games market. I also feel like a lot of studios make the mistake of trying to start too big, including myself in the past and other studios that I see. I think starting small is like a very invaluable piece of advice I wish that I had when I was growing up. So, if you're starting off, I would say maybe take a smaller game, a smaller idea, and just try to publish it and launch it, or just try to build it yourself, or with a couple of friends, and see what the process is like, and go from there. And like that journey will organically build from the point you finished, working on that first game as well.
Fantastic. Very well put, gentlemen. Just one thing before we part ways here. Quickly want to understand, what's your knowledge diet like? What do you guys consume on a daily basis to get smarter and stay, up to date with the games industry and your businesses in general? Anurag, maybe you could go first.
My LinkedIn feed has transformed into a gaming first feed now. I mean, I think just following the right set of people, and I mean, I take a lot of interest in user acquisition, monetization. So yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is a great place to just take control of your feed and knowledge. Like, what do you want to consume? Previously, it would be about startup funding news and e-commerce. All of that is gone. I only have a gaming first feed now. Yeah, I mean, most of I feel that almost everyone's sharing the same piece of knowledge, right? Like, I get forward the same LinkedIn post that I read. So I think my sense is that I'm not the only one who's doing this. Everyone's consuming, getting their daily dose of gyan from LinkedIn. But I mean, Surojit, I think I'm sure you have better references than mine.
Anurag, maybe, I don't know, do you watch the 2.5 Gamers podcast? I think that one has been pretty invaluable. Back in the day, I'm very old school from the industry. So I used to watch a conference called Casual Connect. And just for, refreshing my learnings, I usually go back and check out Casual Connect on YouTube. There's IGDC talks that usually happen every year that are posted on YouTube. So that's kind of the content that I'm consuming online, about the market at least. And on LinkedIn, obviously, we're all connected with each other. It's a pretty small circle in the industry of people who are publishing games. So everyone kind of adds each other on their LinkedIn. So we all end up seeing quite similar posts in the end. But yeah, I think 2.5 Gamers, Casual Connect, IGDC, I feel like anything where people are actually speaking more on video and revealing data, that ends up being a lot more valuable than anything else. And usually in these talks, in the webinars, I'm sure what Nishant is doing with the FTA and the content they're creating with ITDC, with back in the day with Casual Connect, and with 2.5 Gamers now, we are seeing that proliferation of data, and it being a lot more easy to receive that data and then actually being able to act on it. So yeah, I think keep your eyes out on these types of channels as well. And of course, feel free to add any of us on LinkedIn to see any of the updates that we keep liking or posting as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. This has been an absolute pleasure. I hope to have some more conversations with you about different topics down the line. For everyone that's tuned in and enjoyed, I hope you have learned something. Remember, we have a special offer going on for webinar attendees. Hit that button, buy it. Otherwise, I will come and eat your food. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Nishant.
Bye, Anurag.